Good evening, everyone. If you could please silence your cell phones or turn them off at this time, we'd appreciate it. Welcome to the city of South Miami. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. The time is approximately 7 p.m. We will now call the meeting of the South Miami City Commission to order. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor Fernandez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Corey,
Present.
Commissioner Kaye,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If we could all please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And this evening, I'd just like to ask for your prayers. We lost a distinguished member of our community, South Florida community this week, Lincoln Diaz-Balart, former state rep, state senator, and congressman. Also like to ask for your prayers for a dear friend of Commissioner Bonich, who she's mourning this evening, and a former colleague of mine, Mr. Jose Rilo, who was a longtime employee of the City of Miami's Parks Department and passed away recently. If you could keep them in your thoughts this evening, we would appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Kaye, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, we have no presentations this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to take a special moment of privilege to congratulate one of our most distinguished citizens or neighbors, Mr. Dick Ward, and wish him a belated again happy 87th birthday to Mr. Ward. If we could give him a round of applause, please. I know colleagues, he often gives us a little bit of a hard time, but we love to have him around here. And I thought maybe we could commemorate the birthday with a quick picture. Mr. Ward, if you'd like to take a picture with the commission up front here, invite you up. Come on. Let's come on down. Why don't can we take a picture with you here in front of the chambers to commemorate your birthday? Are you serious? Come on. Don't want to? Come on, Dick. Let's do it.
Come on.
No? Well, something's getting better. Perspective, right?
Congratulations, young man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Happy birthday.
Yes, smile. That's all.
It's not easy getting 87, so. Yeah, congratulations, seriously.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Thank you.
You got a sign, by the way.
Huh?
Go get your sign.
Go get your sign. Madam Clerk, are there any add-on items tonight?
No, there aren't.
Good. Let's see, can I get a motion on the minutes of February 18th?
I move the item.
Is there a second on the approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Great.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Corey, a motion by Vice Mayor Corey, and a second by Commissioner Kaye. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Corey,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez,
Yes.
minutes passed 4-0.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, your report, please. Madam Deputy Manager, you've got us this evening? Welcome.
Good evening. Two more outdoor pickleball courts have officially been retrofitted at Marshall Williamson Park. Those are 4 courts now, and they're all available for the community to use. This weekend, we have our next SOMI Second Saturdays. It's Millennials Night, so we welcome everybody to come out 5 to 10 p.m. And I can officially say we've launched Metro Connect SOMI powered by VIA that launched on Thursday. So on the marketing, community affairs side, I know we've done a big push to make sure everybody knows about it, everybody knows about the change. It's been on our website. If you logged on to our website, you received a pop-up letting you know what was happening. We had mailers go out, press release that was picked up by Channel 10, community newspapers, the radio, social media ads. We've sent it in the resident business newsletter. So hopefully everybody's aware And if anybody has questions, we have full FAQs still up on our website. That's the manager's report.
Colleagues, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The pickleballs, I thought we had some already. Are they permanent or they're retrofitted, like they're permanent?
They're-
Or they're temporary?
They're permanent.
We added to what was there already, so now we added the capability of having, but they're the removable nets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're removable? So does someone have to come in there and ask for pickle for it to have the right thing? Or is it
Yeah.
just one net and you can just go play?
I'll let our Parks Director kind of get into the details of that. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's not
Sorry,
like
Q.
Brewer Park where it's a fixed court.
Yeah.
Good evening. At Brewer Park, it's permanent pickleball.
Right.
Everything's fixed. At Marshall Williamson, it's retrofitted. So the actual pickleball courts are off to the side, the actual netting. When you want to play, you'll move it, it's portable, and you'll put it on the lines for pickleball play.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Yeah,
Just
and
wanted
we
to
went
understand that.
we already had 2 retrofitted courts at Marshall Williamson, now we have 4.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Director, is that first come, first serve, or is
That
there?
is correct. First
Okay.
come, first serve, or if you want to reserve a court, you can contact us via email or, our office, and we could reserve it for you.
Excellent.
But it's either or, right? It's either tennis or pickleball?
Correct. So if you have tennis being played, 2 pickleball courts will not be available on that tennis court.
Understood.
Thank
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Madam Manager, one quick question. Anyone else have questions?
Go ahead.
Any sense of the ridership on the weekend or can you get us statistics on the first weekend?
Yeah, we don't have any yet, but we can request it.
Thank you. And I guess the follow-up on the freebie database. So if we can get an update on that as well. Okay. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney, your report, please.
We have nothing to report at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a number of discussion items that we will be deferring since, in the absence of Commissioner Bonich. Can I get a motion to defer M2, M3, and M4?
I'll move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kaya, a second by Commissioner Rodriguez. Without objection, show those items deferred to the March 18th meeting. Okay. Commissioner Rodriguez, you have a discussion item M1. Madam Clerk, if you could read that into the record, please.
We skip public remarks.
Oh, we skip, oh, my apologies. Can you get me a list, please? Mr. Ward, I know your name was first on the list. Why don't you come up and kick us off for public remarks? Floor is yours. Public remarks are open. We'll recognize you first, sir.
I hope we don't have to have that thing for more than a couple more months. You know, this is the first meeting I've been to since November, and I've been attending these meetings on a regular basis since 1961, probably before some of you were born. The thing I wanted to address you about today is the fact that these high-rise buildings that you had approved, and I stood here and just gave you, you know what, for those buildings. And when that article appeared in the paper with the pictures of the buildings and everything, I said, oh boy, I can't wait to see what happened. And it didn't happen. So I have to say to you, I guess all the old timers just moved away or passed away. And you won't be here when those buildings are complete, but the traffic is gonna be out of sight and they're gonna be hollering bloody murder. It's good to be back. And I have a feeling that all of these ordinances, most of the ordinance on tonight, are going to make it possible to build larger buildings in some of these areas. And say to Commissioner Rodriguez, I congratulate you on your victory. And I can't believe the amount of money you all spent to get elected. You're worse than the mayor. I said when the mayor raised that $64,000, I said, you know, we're not going to see the good old man run for office or the lady anymore. I tried to get 3 people to run against some of you people and couldn't get a soul to do it, and they all told me too much money. But anyway, I have to say this, regardless of how much money you raised, all of you, as much as I shoot at you once in a while, I have to say, people have to realize that, you know, something's wrong with you guys that are willing to sit up there and serve the people 24/7. And to me, I think that's great that you all have that dedication to help this city, even though I don't agree with you a lot of times. But I don't know why government is able to run, because people like you are willing to serve the people. And I say that's great. With that's about the best remark I'll make for the next 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have Mr. John Edward Smith. And Mr. Jacobs, you're next thereafter. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, Vice Mayor. Dick, I really like what you had to say. Congratulations to this group, and glad I supported all of you, and Lisa is not here. I'd like to just briefly say and thank Vice Mayor and the commission for recognizing Reverend Dr. Anna Price at her memorial this past Saturday. Our Vice Mayor did an excellent job in presenting the proclamation from the city. And Anna and I go back many, many years. From her first election as mayor, the campaign that followed that was very divisive, unfortunately, for the city. And then later on, working with Dr. Price and then Vice Mayor Armando Olivares in putting together a group called Citizens for Good Government in South Miami. She's always been such a beacon of light. You know, we used to observe our mutual birthdays. Well, we were 4 days apart, February of '43. And she was on the cusp of Aquarius, and I'm on the cusp of Pisces. So we always joked about the fish in the water getting together and observing our birthday. I want to say also, you know, working with Gail a few weeks ago when that news broke, and I was speaking before you, I followed up with the mayor, and I apologized. I said I just wasn't on top of my game that night, and with Gail's passing, I was very distracted. And I also had, at 82, I had a senior moment. You know, I go with the Joe Biden shuffle. I always used to be very concerned when he was getting off the helicopter, going down those steps. Come on, Joe, you can do it. But I'm also reminded that Mick Jagger is also 82. So there you go. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobs, good evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm glad to see you all here. I'm happy to be a part of this city. And I was on the planning board from 2016 to 2022 when one of the main things we did was rezone the whole city. And it used to be that the applicant would come in and present what he wanted to do with a parcel of land, and then people would get to hear what the plan was and how the zoning was developing, how much more dense it is. But I feel with the new way that you're doing it, it seems like you make the deal in lobbying mornings, and you come back and instead of the one who wants to change the zoning come in and present, you just tell us what it's going to be, and it's pretty much a done deal. It seems like we've lost some citizen input in that way. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, I want to thank Commissioner Calle and Rodriguez and the mayor for helping me look into this. In my neighborhood, there's Mango Terrace is right next one street away from me. And you all sent me the information that the city had, and in 2023, it started to flood. That was the first notice of it. And I asked you, was there any evidence before that? And no one has come up with anything. So in 2023, what happened? There was a very large house, twice as big as any other in the neighborhood, double the size, built. It's a mansion among modest homes. And I thought that the flooding was going to be all up and down Mango Terrace, but no, it's only in front of that house, the house east of it, the house west of it, and the house north across the street. That's where the flooding is. So I wonder, how did you investigate it? It seemed like, yes, there is flooding there that needs to be done, but it only happened after this huge house was built, and the runoff from it is causing flooding. And there's no evidence that it's the weather, it's the zoning. So what are you going to do about it? When that came up, who is in charge of investigating why it's flooding? It's flooding, yeah, but it's not flooding anywhere else. Why? It's a simple, reasonable thing to scrutinize what comes before you. And I
Mr.
realize
Jacobs,
it's
if I could
only
ask you a question, you're referring to 6790?
6790
Okay.
Mango Terrace, yeah. And the, you have to scrutinize what comes before you. It's $150,000 out of a budget for flooding of $650,000, so it's about 25% of the flooding budget. You're allowing 3 houses where there was 1, 2 houses, you're developing intensely in the residential neighborhoods, and if flooding happens, we pay the bill. Why is it that taxpayers are stressed with this bill? I mean, it's not hurting me in any way, but it doesn't make sense that the city would do this. So I'd like to know what happened and what you're going to do about it in the future, because you're still building.
Sir, I actually have an answer for you if you'd like to hear it. So I actually got an unsolicited text after our last meeting on February 18th from Bradley Cassell, who used to own the home at 6790 Southwest 76 Terrace, which is before it was demolished. And his response to me was that there was flooding in front of his home all the time. So it's been a long-standing, persistent condition, apparently unrelated to the construction of that home. But we have asked our public works director to follow up and confirm that.
Oh, it was just that he never complained.
I don't know the fact. That's from the horse's mouth from the owner of the home immediately before it was redeveloped. So I don't think there's any reason for him not to be telling me the facts. So he's still very involved with our pension board, as you know, so someone who's still, notwithstanding he's lived in the city, still giving to the community through his service. So just by way of a quick update for you. Mr. McCants, you're next.
James McCann, 6210 Southwest 63rd Terrace. First of all, thank you guys for the flowers and the proclamation to Dr. Price. You did good Saturday, and it was a beautiful home going for Dr. Price. I've been knowing Dr. Price for a long time. You heard all the beautiful things that were said and done. And if you read the obituary, you'll know she has done so many things. So I'm here to say that I'm proud to have considered her a friend and a mentor for all she's done. You know, what a 1-2 punch with Gail and then her. So we are still planning something for her, and I think it's April 12th. And I'll give you guys the flyer when it's finalized, so we can go ahead and still talk about her and in our special ways. We'll have time. I also want to thank you guys for the discussion for the mobile sales, possibly, and the amendment of the ordinance to reflect that. I think that will solve a lot of problems, and we can discuss on how this can be done with the local churches, hopefully and preferably. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Good.
Yes.
Mr. McCants. Can you let us know if there's anything that we can do for the event on April 14th, you said?
12.
April 12th.
April 12th?
I'll let you know,
I know
Mr.
I couldn't attend this weekend. I was out of town this weekend. So whatever I can do to help, please let us know, and, you know, we'll see what we can do to figure it out.
We sure can.
Thank
I
you.
sure will. All right.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, good evening.
All right, good evening. LaShonda Williams, 6477 Southwest 60th Avenue. I was coming here today because I was looking over the agenda, and I see that there have been some changes since the last meeting that we had regarding the future designation for the Mango Lot. And I know that that's going to be discussed as an item later this evening, so I think I'll speak more to it then. But, you know, one of the things I just wanted to reiterate is that there was some language in that item regarding the dates and some of the meetings that took place. We hadn't really, like I said last time, been noticed in that way, like required within a mile of that change. And I am happy, I will say, to hear that it's trying to lessen the density. However, I do have a concern about what you're putting there. And so, like others, you know, there are some issues now coming up. And I don't know if it's just because of the neighborhood itself needs to be upgraded in terms of certain things. I know that's happening, but there are issues with flooding. There are issues with growth. So I want to speak more to it when the item comes up, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I was a little disappointed. Last time, I think part of that was supposed to be identified as the northeast corner as a park, and now it seems like the entire lot is up for rezoning. I was hoping that part of that would include that space. Because, you know, it's important for all residents. I understand their growth. I don't want to ever come up here and say I don't understand growth, because it's happening all over. But I think that when residents come up and we're speaking to specific things, if there are things that you can do as a day, it's because there's not anybody up there that I haven't voted for. Regardless of party, I don't get into that. I look at you as a person and I say, hey, what can you do to bring to our city to keep us out of litigation that will ultimately save taxpayer dollars, but can also kind of preserve what we have going? And to be very frank, you know, I know that where all of you live, and many of you live in places that are abutting tree line street after tree line street after tree line street. And I understand that the area where I may live may not have that, but we do want to maintain some of that. I also want to talk about the historical nature of that. I really think that that place, because of the fact that it has grandfathered trees by state of Florida statute, they should be preserved as part of the historical component of a person that founded the city. He actually made those trees and planted them, and they're over 50 years. So you can't replicate that anywhere else. It would be lovely to see that well beyond our years. I'm sure we're all middle-aged, most of us, well beyond we're gone from this earth, that we would still have something to look back from and as a token. We have other things, statutes, but it's nothing like having an actual thing that someone planted by hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kelly, you're recognized. Good evening.
Good evening, Levi Kelly, 6250 Southwest 60 Avenue. A couple of items that I want to just kudos to Vice Mayor for his efforts this past weekend. Great job. And understand that if you guys could have been there, you would have. I think on the other issue that, of course, the last meeting we had some discussions that were need to be had, and I just wanted to just specifically thank the chief and the assistant chief for following through on their commitment to coming out to the community. There was a meeting with the Lee Park management a day or so ago, and they are really discussing ways to better do things in terms of how and when and how and so forth, and understand there's some movement afoot to address some major issues. So I just want to say kudos to the chief and his staff for following through on that. As it relates to the upcoming events that we are planning to have, which is our Juneteenth activity, which will be on the 21st. And that's a smaller event, much better confined to an area. So we just want to let you guys know that is in the planning stage, and we'll keep you abreast. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the comments. There's no one else registered. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address this commission at this time? If so, please come forward. Floor is open. Madam Clerk, there's no one online?
No one's online.
Okay. Again, anyone else in the chamber? Seeing none, then, we will close public remarks. Colleagues, we have a brief agenda, so did anyone want to make any commission reports you want to share this evening? None? I just want to, again, extend my condolences to Hollis and the family. It was a wonderful ceremony. I watched it on the live stream remotely. I was in Orlando this week with my son for a lacrosse tournament. I was touched to hear that after the naming of the park space that we designated a few meetings ago, that she was able to internalize that before she passed and shared a wonderful moment with her son about it. That brought me a great deal of comfort following her passing. So thank you to the Vice Mayor, who did a fantastic job representing all of us at a difficult time. We're indebted to you for your presentation and for your presence. So thanks again. With that, we'll move on to our discussion items. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Kaya, do you want to
Sorry,
say?
Mayor, I just wanted to tell, the public that we had the senior games last week as well.
We did, yes.
I know it was part of the manager's reports, but we didn't really talk about it, and I figured good time to talk about it. We had a really good turnout, a lot of good pictures and videos. The chief did a really good job of dancing and playing, so it was a good job. But it was a really good turnout, and I'm glad Parks Department, as usual, doing a great job, so thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yes, Commissioner Corey, you're recognized.
I just also wanted to thank all the residents from South Miami who showed up to Dr. Price's funeral. It was obviously she meant so much to so many different people all over. And then also thank you to Mayor Danielle Levine Cava, who came and spoke as well. I thought that was a very nice thing for her to do, and continued support for the people and things we do in the city. So.
Yeah, her remarks were excellent as well. Very, very humorous, very personal. Chief Rodriguez, anything? Are you good? Okay, so we will move on. We do have one discussion item, Commissioner Rodriguez's item. Madam Clerk, if you could just quickly read the title.
Yes, a special mobile vendor events for churches.
Okay. Commissioner Rodriguez, why don't you kick this discussion off?
So currently, we have an ordinance where we do not allow food trucks or basically in the city other than an industrial area or at a construction site, and basically after 30 minutes, they have to move. At the Unity event, I was with Mr. McCants, and we were discussing because we were eating off the food trucks that were there. The food was great. Everybody was having a great time. And, it came to light that this, having some of these food trucks come into some of the communities and, where the residents can come and I guess build a sense of community, for me sounded like a good idea. It also gives an opportunity for these local vendors to make a little money, while working. And so we discussed, and it'd be something great to offer the community, where at whatever local church in the city, so it could be at Mount Olive, at St. John's, it could be at VU, that they would be able to provide the community, food trucks, on the days that they approve, and like I said, bring bring the community together, build a sense of community. It's a place where we can all attend, and we can go out and meet the residents. Our police force can go out, our employees from the city can go out and meet the residents, and I just think it's a good opportunity. But like I said, our code right now doesn't allow it. So I wanted to bring this up to see what you guys thought of it, what the commission and Mr. Mayor, you thought of it. And hopefully we can move forward and come up with some guidelines and give the community, an opportunity to do something where, they can all gather and the local vendors can, make some money on the side and provide some delicious food.
Yeah, let's go left to right here. So Commissioner Corey, thoughts?
I do think it's a good idea, and whenever I've been in areas where there isn't, a walkable distance to a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that, there's always this desire for that type of activity. Of course, you have to be wary of any unintended consequences, competition that might exist with restaurants or things like that in that area. That's usually the argument against food trucks, regulations in terms of health, safety. So I do think there's a lot that might have to go into like the considerations on how to approve these things, but I do think it's a great idea. And I think particularly in the areas that you had mentioned, I've heard a lot of feedback that there's a desire for like actual programmed activity instead of just sort of, loose gatherings. So.
And I agree. That's why this is mostly in residential neighborhoods and away from, our SOMI district and.
Yeah, and I have heard interest of people doing this at parks too. I know that would be kind of an expansion of this, and I don't know if that would be appropriate either, but I have had residents request that before, so I don't know, just a thought.
Commissioner Gaye.
Yeah, so look, we've spoken about this before about having food trucks, specifically at church locations, religious locations. There's only two issues that I have with it. VU, for example, VU, we have an issue with traffic and population. When we have the churches in general, like the community is not a big fan of all the traffic and the parking on the swales and doing all that stuff. So that's something we have to be a little conscious about when we start moving forward with this particular idea. And I'm mostly talking about VU there, but as we grow that, just be conscious of traffic and the abilities of in and out, because VU has a really big footprint and they can bring a lot of trucks and they can bring a lot of people. So just be conscious with that. The other thing that I was gonna say is I would love to do the event with our local vendors. I think that one of the things that we've struggled with is really to bring up and nurture our community of vendors, not only from give them the opportunity and how to run a food truck, give them the ability on how to get licensed, get the local taxes, everything, all the document prepared, so they can do this with a permit and move forward, not only just here, but to maybe create a living out of it. And so one of the things that I would want to do, Commissioner, is figure out how we actually have a program in place, whether with Hector Lobo in our offices or with our community in general, so the community understands how to make sure all their food trucks and what they're selling is all legal and there's no issues moving forward, so they can expand. I think those are the two major issues that I had with it, but other than that, I love the idea.
Yeah. Sure, I'm going to just give you my.
Oh, go.
No, so I just want to say, I think it's an excellent idea. I think a monthly roundup or so would be, and if it rotated around the city, I think that would be an interesting thing as well to kind of bring people together from a wider cross-section. I think the collection of vendors that we had at the Uni Festival were excellent, but it'd be great to have them come across the street and maybe make it a staple of a second Saturday, part of the programming, to have that kind of orientation for the event. So again, there's more cross-pollination. And again, I think we just need to be careful when we allow these things, have the permitting be such so that it's contextually appropriate. To Commissioner Gaya's point, make sure that maybe different locations you limit the number of possible vendors, so you limit the amount of traffic and size of the roundup. But I think it's an idea worth exploring, and look forward to you bringing back some legislation for us to consider.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. So the idea is actually to answer some of your questions. We already discussed parks. I guess that's something we will have to discuss with the city attorney. I, for this instance, chose churches just because they have the parking space, and they're also a place where community can come together, and they're usually located somewhere central of the residents and have the parking for it. So that was the choice behind that. Commissioner Kaya, yes, the idea is to have a certain amount of trucks, because you're right, VU can bring 40 trucks in their huge parking lot, and I agree that. So it would be a set amount where it goes cross-city. So at every church, whether we choose to do 5 or 6, something that's reasonable, that fits, you know, in all the parking lots, and is also helps, it helps our local vendors. And I agree with Commissioner Kaya, and I think that's what me and Mr. McCann, it's bring local food trucks into these events. So we are helping our locals, you know, serve to our residents. So I appreciate it. I mean, any ideas or anything else? Any other questions?
I think you gotta go write legislation now.
Yeah, no? Oh, well, we got our great city attorneys right here helping me out with that. But I hope to bring this for first reading. And I hope we could get this done. And, you know, like I said, I just think it's good to bring the community together and build a sense of community.
Amen. Okay, we'll look forward to it.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you can read item 1, our first reading ordinance for public hearing.
Yes. Item 1, an ordinance of the Mayor City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, amending the future land use map of the future land use element of the City of South Miami Comprehensive Plan pursuant to small-scale amendment procedures set forth in Section 163.3187 Florida statutes to change the future land use designation of certain parcels on the west side of 62nd Avenue between Southwest 64th Street to the north and Southwest 68th Street to the south from their current destination of residential, limited commercial, RLC, to mixed-use commercial residential, MUCR.
Okay. Mr. Diaz, good evening. How are you? Mark Diaz?
Alvarez.
Mark Alvarez, sorry. I don't know
Sorry.
why- Sorry.
Good
Mark,
evening-
it's been
good
too
evening,
long. Mr. Alvarez, good evening. My apologies. I'm having a senior moment today.
Good evening. This is Mark Alvarez with Corradino Group. I have a
Sir,
very short presentation
yeah, do you
about
have,
this.
is your presentation one presentation for all 3 items, or are there separate presentations for each?
It's one for each item.
Okay, thank you, sir. So,
There's
great. So we'll go ahead and hear your presentation, then we'll open up the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay.
You're recognized.
Could you, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good to be here, and we have to do this. I'm going to ask you to just move the slide forward to the second one. So what we have tonight is a future land use amendment. It's just a map amendment. It's for the parcel, 16 parcels along the west side of Southwest 62nd Avenue. It's a small-scale amendment process, so we don't send it for state review. This will go through 2 hearings and the planning board. This has been sponsored by the city administration, and what we're changing is we're going from, it's currently designated residential limited commercial, RLC, and we're changing it to mixed-use commercial residential, MUCR. The reason we're doing this is that when we changed the future land use element, which is the comprehensive plan text, we eliminated these categories. We eliminated the category of RLC with the intention to have a mixed-use buffer there. So this all really, it's part of the overall intent of a rezoning effort that happened with downtown. We got through the TSDD, we discussed this strip as being a buffer, but we always discussed it as a mixed-use buffer and having a little more room to work with it. So the MUCR that we're changing it to is exactly the same as the former designation of the hometown. One of the things I want to emphasize, this is only a future land use map change. We are not changing the zoning. So the effect of this immediately is not to change the zoning and allow something else to happen there. We will have further discussions about the zoning. We intended to have this become a neighborhood mixed use, which is a district that we will be writing in the next few months. So we're going to have a lot of discussion about the details of what the form is and what the height is and what can go there. But right now we have to sort of clear the way for that and change the future land use map, future land use map designation. Next slide, please. This shows the affected land area. It's 16 parcels. In its entirety, it's about 2.79 acres. It is, next slide, please. It is surrounded by as we all know, to the west of it is a residential neighborhood. However, it's separated by a 20-foot alley. To its east is the 62nd Avenue. 62nd Avenue, again, this is our transition from the TSDD, from the downtown, to go one step down on this strip and then transition into the neighborhood. And again, how that transition will happen will be part of the zoning discussions. What we have to do now is change the future land use. To the north is also residential, and to the south we have TSDD. So this is the transition area between downtown and the single family residential. And in this case, we have the additional benefit of the 20-foot buffer on the alley. Next slide, please. Just to show you on the map, I mean, I guess the map is just a color change. Sometimes it helps people understand it, but we have this salmon color, which is RLC, which has now been a category that's eliminated from the text of the future land use element or the comprehensive plan. And we're changing it to the text of neighborhood MUCR, which is still, we intend to use this now as our buffer area. So that's the map change. And as you can see, to the south is TSDD, it's the purple, which is a downtown designation. To its east is a downtown designation. Also to the east is the school, is the JRE Lee School. We have a little bit of Williamson Park, and we have the home for senior citizens. And just to the very north, we do have cul-de-sac from 64 Terrace. There are single family homes up there. Again, this is basically clearing the way so that we can now do the neighborhood mixed use zoning in the coming months to really define the form that will be in there, and then it will be mixed use. Next slide, please. So this is a table of the first two columns are the change from future land use map category to the MUCR, and you can see the residential limited commercial, which again doesn't exist anymore, but it's a very, very low density, low intensity use. And in fact, this area is mostly parking lots and mostly vacant land. I think it's got an FAR of about 0.2 for the whole strip. We will change that to MUCR, and the existing zoning is still there. We're not changing that. And the existing zoning can still be compatible with the MUCR land use. When we get to rezoning it, that will be the neighborhood mixed use, and it's in the column where it says we will define that then, and that's when we will sit down and really work through the form, the height, the transitions, and the uses that will happen in there. Next slide, please. And finally, we always apply the 8 criteria that we need to do to satisfy state statutes. We found it consistent with all of the criteria. If there's any questions on this, I'll be happy to answer them.
Your colleagues, do you have any questions? I have a couple, if you want me to kick off. Just, Mark, from a process perspective, you said something at the beginning of your presentation about the RLC category not existing. So just to clarify for the benefit of the audience, what we've been doing with both our zoning and land use categories is, given that we had so many unique categories, we've been trying to consolidate them, correct, into a handful of categories. And this is part of that consolidation process, correct? So the RLC designation will be deleted eventually.
Will be deleted. It was marked for deletion at first reading of the last round of text changes to the comprehensive plan. At first reading, we had discussed it at first reading and said, well, we can't get rid of it yet. It's still on the map. So we kept it, but it is marked for future deletion.
Okay, so
And
this
you'll
is
see that again in the next
this is the remapping. Once there's no land designated RLC,
then we can.
the guidelines are no longer necessary, so they'll be deleted at that time.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're explaining that to the public clearly. Secondly, Mark, if you can clarify a statement you made. Again, this is just addressing the land use component. There are no implementing, if this change is adopted on second reading, we still have to actually implement this category through the adoption of a zoning ordinance or zoning designation.
Yeah, that's correct. If you want Mr. Alvarez to answer that.
Either of you is fine.
Okay, yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of what RLC allows, versus what the proposed category allows in terms of height and density. Can you give us a quick summary, because I'm sure there are people that are interested in that?
Yes. So there is a, currently the RLC allows 2 stories, 5 units an acre, which means 13 units could be built on this area, and an FAR of 0.8. The mixed use, the
Sorry.
MUCR. that
Mark,
we're
just,
changing it
Mark, if you
to
could stop
does
1
not
second.
have-
Mark, excuse me, Mr. Alvarez, my apologies. So just so I understand what you just said, 5 units an acre, so across all of these parcels, 13 units could be built. Is that correct?
Correct.
Previously, under the current
That's correct.
designation? Okay.
Yes.
Continue, my
It's
apologies.
an extremely low intensity. It's an extremely low intensity mixed use that's really not viable. And we had this discussion in the middle of last year about changing this area. The MUCR is much more open and would allow it. Basically, it changes. It has permissive mixed use, but it will require the zoning to regulate the height, the density, and the FAR. And everything will really depend on the zoning. So we're changing it to a category that allows a lot. It's very open. However, currently it sits with its neighborhood retail zoning, which is consistent with the MUCR. The neighborhood retail zoning only allows pretty much what's there. 2 stories, 25 feet high, and a 0.2 FAR, a 0.25. So we're not doing anything right now.
Mr. Alvarez, you're breaking up.
What
Mr. Alvarez, you're
goes
breaking
in
up.
there.
If you can
So
repeat.
basically, the MUCR leaves it open, but we'll have the zoning discussion to know. Say it again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you broke up there. Your connection got a little weak, so we couldn't hear you. So, Mr. City Attorney, if you could help me out here, I just want to be clear for the public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What does the MUCR designation allow by way? Is there a limit on height or density?
There is no limit on height or density. That is, it calls for that all to be limited through the zoning
Okay.
ordinance. And at present, the zoning, what Mr. Alvarez was saying is that the zoning ordinance allows basically 2 stories, 24 feet.
Okay. And so again, because I want to simplify this, because these are complicated topics.
Yep.
So for people who are listening to this, again, this will all be, what will be permitted will be defined by what are the implementing rules, the zoning ordinance that will say whether it remains at 2 stories or something greater than
Or if
2
it
stories.
Goes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions?
Through the mayor, just to expand on what the mayor, because that's the same question I had. What we still yet have to decide what the height and density is going to be.
That's
Okay.
correct. And at present, it's 2 stories.
Okay, perfect. And being mixed-use commercial residential, that basically means that the owner of this property or properties has the choice of whether they want to do what I would say, I guess, apartments with commercial in the bottom or townhomes.
Or both.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it's to their discretion what they want to build there.
Yeah, they have the ability, it is intended to provide for mixed use, so a mix of uses, but it does acknowledge that there can be horizontal mixed uses, where you've got, residential here, commercial over here.
Okay.
Right, as long as the district is intended to be a mixed-use district. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be every building is mixed use.
And so also is there anything, this may have not even been written, so I'm just, the distance from, I guess would be the residential or alleyway to the front of the property, are they supposed to build on a certain, because again, my fear, and which we've said from the beginning that we started talking about this in December, or actually before you guys, years now, my worry is that we put something too big there and those residential houses that lie behind these properties now lose their privacy.
Right, so the current zoning restriction is 2 stories, but we also have a restriction of a portion of the property, and I'm looking for it right now. I can't remember if it's 75 feet or 100 feet of depth. If you are adjacent to residential, there's a limitation of 2 stories.
Okay.
Also in our code, generally, across the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Further questions? None? Okay. Let's open up public remarks at this time. If there's any member of the audience who'd like to speak on item 1, please come forward. Ask for your name and address for the record, please. Ma'am, good evening.
Good evening, Shantae Wells, 6102 Southwest 68th Street. So my question is, what is it as far as the advantages for them? Because it's not been wiped out, the current use, and you would still have to change the zoning. So what's the real true purpose of actually going through this process to get the declaration of the mixed use? I'm concerned with the traffic and the congestion. I'm concerned with the seniors that live in that area primarily. I'm concerned with all of those retired educators who are along that strip, who you guys already ran off a gym that we had there long-term that invested in this community. So why now would we be looking to change the zoning? Is the goal to get some high-rises overshadowed? Let's think about the whole of this. So I want to know specifically, what is the purpose of changing this declaration, especially when you would have to then go to change the zoning? It's not making sense to me.
So, if I may.
You may, you're recognized.
State law requires that any zoning be implemented be consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is changing that comprehensive plan so that the zoning process can then take place. I don't know that there is a specific end in mind. I know that what has been discussed before is a neighborhood mixed use category, like definitely not high rise. I don't think that's in the cards at all. That's not been discussed. You know, a low rise, like 2, 3, maybe 4 stories. I don't know. That's up to the commission to determine. But essentially, it's a mixed use neighborhood type of, you know, community serving retail with some residential component. That's the concept behind mixed use.
The best I can address your question is by saying that I think what we are trying to create is a condition where something gets built on that corridor has been vacant, empty for too long, and I don't think that's serving the neighborhood well. I walked all those homes when I campaigned on the backside of Stunnas, which you mentioned, who lived, you know, in direct opposition, for lack of a better way of putting it, with that business. Very clear to me that they would want nothing more than 3 stories to the neighbors I spoke to. So certainly that's kind of my guide star in this conversation. But I think the goal is to do something there that activates the streets so we just don't have a bunch of empty lots, since they've been in that condition for the better part, at least the 20 years I've been driving up and down that section of the roadway. That's the best answer I can give you right now. The one comment I do have, Mr. City Attorney, is as we pick the right zoning category, just to your point about high rises, we always have to be mindful, I say to the public, of the effects of the Live Local Act, where we have been, by the state legislature, in some instances, we have a mixed use designation from a zoning perspective, you know, can be preempted. So we have to factor that, and I just wanted you to make sure you could explain that further in the record as well.
So, yeah, the Live Local Act allows for a certain amount of development of what the state considers affordable housing. As long as it's an affordable housing project, but that means 40% of the units have to be affordable housing under the state definition. This is allowed in any commercial, industrial, or mixed-use district. The state is considering now a bill that would better define the mixed-use districts. We obviously have a vested interest in how they define it, because the goal is not to have this area. Live local development basically trumps any kind of local zoning. So what we'd like to do is find a sweet spot where it is attractive enough to development that they remain local. They don't build under the state regulations and, you know, destroy our whole planning strata.
So let's put a pin in that conversation. We'll get back to it when we discuss it here, but I just wanted to have that out there. Further public comment, please, at this time.
So I heard you say that it requires 40% of the density to be affordable housing? If it's mixed use, MMUR, whatever it is?
No, no, no.
Oh, you didn't say
If it's
that.
Live Local Act under the state regulations,
Yeah.
in order to basically ignore our local zoning,
Yeah, to override us.
to override us, they have to have 40% of what the state considers affordable housing, which is different from the common definition of
And
affordable
so
housing.
what is it?
120% of AMI.
Yeah.
40%?
120%.
40% of the units and not more than 120% of AMI, which is not particularly cheap. Yeah. Okay. Further public comment. Floor is open. Seeing no one in the audience at this time, Madam Clerk, is there anyone online?
No, no one's online, no.
Okay. So we will close the public hearing at this time. Colleagues, discussion. Commissioner Rodriguez, you're
Through the mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. City Attorney, Tony, do we know those lots do they land in the Todd? Are they a mile away or are they further than, from the station?
These are not, we do not have these designated as transit-oriented development.
So then Live Local here wouldn't apply?
No, Live Local still applies on any commercial, industrial, or mixed use.
Or mixed use,
That's
so
been
then
the-
we need to be,
That's been the biggest concern.
So yeah, so I was going to suggest, this has always been the point of sensitivity for me since we started talking about Sunset Place and the impacts of that zoning change on neighboring communities. I've always had 62nd Avenue in mind. So I think I'd like to move the item for adoption with a caveat that we probably take it up on second reading after the session closes. So we know with some level of predictability what Tallahassee has adopted and whether we want to move forward with this particular designation based on modifications they may or may not make to the Live Local Act that could impact what we decide to do here. So,
Yeah, can I clarify two things?
yes, you may.
Yeah. The current zoning of those parcels is neighborhood retail. They are already a commercial district.
Okay.
So to the extent that the state moves forward with House Bill 943 as written, which I'm sure it will change some, there's still exposure.
Understood,
Yeah.
but query whether, is it the land use or the zoning that is the arbiter of whether they're eligible? That's what I don't remember right now, and I'm asking you.
It's the zoning.
It's the zoning.
It's the zoning.
Okay,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, zone for commercial, industrial, or mixed use.
okay, so we have exposure today.
Correct. Correct. So just keep that in
Okay,
mind.
that's fine. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Colleagues, further discussion.
The actual land, the way, the width, proportionally, it's very difficult.
hard to build structured parking,
It's
yes.
very difficult to
Yeah.
put the structure in a
Yeah,
high-rise,
yeah.
so I think we're pretty safe on there, but.
Yeah,
keep
no, I
an eye
agree,
on it,
yeah.
Just making sure.
It's an excellent comment. I agree. Dimensions are tough. That's it? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move the motion.
Okay, is there a second? We have a motion by Commissioner Kaye, a second by the Vice Mayor. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll on item 1, please.
Yes, Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
yes.
Vice Mayor Corey,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes,
Item passes on first reading.
thank you. If you can read item 2, please.
Item 2, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, amending the future land use map of future land use element of the City of South Miami comprehensive plan pursuant to a small-scale amendment procedure set forth in section 163.3187 Florida statutes to change the future land use designation of certain parcels located at north side of Southwest 64th Street, generally between Southwest 59th Avenue on the east and Southwest 59th Place on the west, from the current designation of mixed residential moderate density MRMD to townhouse residential TR.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Alvarez, you are recognized for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. It's Mark Alvarez, the Corradino Group, consultant, planning consultant for the city. This is similar. However, we have 4 lots along 64th Street that are currently designated on the future land use map as MRMD, mixed residential moderate density. This is also a category that we seek to eliminate from the text, and we have provided to strike that out. It's again, this is a consolidation. When we discuss, again, we started this discussion in the summer. We talked about changing much of this area to a townhouse designation. So we are taking only these 4 lots because they are designated with mixed residential moderate density, which is a category that we are eliminating from the future land use element. I have had some owners call and ask why we aren't doing the rest of some of the other area, and that's the reason. We do intend to do this to the larger area, and we'll have that discussion in the future. We wanted to make this change to these 4 lots because we want to eliminate this category from the text of the comprehensive plan. So it is sponsored by the city administration. It is again a small-scale amendment process. And I explained the reason why, and again, it is consistent with everything that we discussed in the workshops and how we want to start trying to redevelop this area. One other thing, since we just had a live local discussion as part of the last item, this area has been looked at to make some changes, particularly along 64th Street. And one of the reasons we don't want to go to mixed use is exactly because we don't want to change the protection from live local. Right now, it's a residential category. Yeah, it's a residential category. It's written like it almost could not be, but it is considered residential, and we're going to keep it residential. Townhouse residential is also a residential category that has a little leeway for live work on the bottom. So the whole live local discussion, again, we are continuing to protect this area from the effect of live local.
Mr. Alves,
Next slide, please.
Mr. Alves, very quickly, just to kind of summarize and recap what you just said. These parcels are not eligible today for Live Local, and the change we are making will not make them eligible for Live Local. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. And these are the 4 parcels. They are each duplex parcels, 2 living units each. They are 63 by 100 feet deep, 63 feet wide on the front. And we again, the reason we're picking the 4 parcels out and not doing others is just because they have a category that we seek to eliminate from the text of the comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. So their location is that they are actually approximately across from Madison Square, and they are surrounded on their rear side and actually on the east side by single-family residential. The one that's on the west side does actually abut a vacant parcel that is zoned MUCR. So we can't control that transition, but we can control what we're changing today. And these will continue to be insulated from the local, and the townhouse residential basically creates a better development potential for these areas. It's not really focused on duplex, but on townhouses, a 3-story with a ADU on the bottom or a live work on the bottom. Next slide, please. And again, the map change. The subject land right now has it sits there with the MRMD designation. It's different from everything else around it. We're still doing the same thing, which is different from everything else around it. Again, we do intend to bring the townhouse designation into more areas of this neighborhood. We just want to take care of these 4 because we're eliminating the MRMD category. Next slide, please. And again, this has the change from the future land use map category from MRMD. Currently, there could be 13 units on this land. The way the land is divided up, there are 8 duplexes. The density allowance for townhouse residential, which the future land use map, the future land use category for townhouse residential is quite dense, but the zoning will change this, and how they can fit into that area will change this. Currently, right now, actually, these 4 parcels are also zoned RS3, which is not actually consistent with MRMD. We will leave the zoning, and we will intend to rezone these later when we're doing this more comprehensively. I've spoken to some of the owners of the property and explained what we're doing. That in fact, each of these parcels would, instead of having a duplex on them, would be allowed to have 2 townhouses. Each townhouse would have a unit above and possibly an ADU on the bottom. So it does double the density and creates an envelope that's much more developable, and that's what we want to see on 64th Street. Again, we're not changing the zoning yet, but the townhouse zoning is already in place. It has allowances for these parcels. The 63-foot width is consistent with the zoning. Again, we haven't zoned it, but when we do, these will fit in perfectly. These are exactly what we intended to change the zoning for. And then finally, the last slide is the criteria. If you go to the next slide. Is the criteria. We always apply these criteria so that we're satisfying state statutes and so that we make sure that we don't do anything that's going to make something that's no longer orderly incompatible or will have adverse effects. We do believe that this will be beneficial to the neighborhood as we move towards rezoning it, and will create a product that is both something that will help redevelop the neighborhood with a very positive and desirable product that doesn't change the neighborhood, that still has front doors, that still has the neighborhood feeling to it, that just allows more and more affordable housing, as well as the possibility to have live work on the bottom, because it is 64th Street is more of a collector street. If there are any questions?
Colleagues, any questions of Mr. Alvarez or the city attorney? None? Okay. Let's open up the public hearing. Anyone who'd like to address this commission on item 2, please come forward at this time. Your name and address for the record. Good evening again.
Shantae Wells, 6102 Southwest 68th Street. I am in disbelief at what I'm hearing today, because in essence, what I'm hearing is the desire to eliminate the people, longtime people who look just like me, from being in that parcel, to affect the church that is also along the street of that parcel, that has had that lot and an actual house right there on the corner of 64th Street. Changing the zoning for what purpose? We all know if you build new townhomes, none of that will be affordable, and none of those people who currently live there will be able to return there. So what purpose would it be other than gentrification? There is absolutely no reason for us to sit up here and to do this to people who have worked hard to own these properties. Not only that, the whole fancy words of changing this and future land use, for what? We have what we need right now. We have a whole bunch of capacity, and if we wanted to actually do a sprucing up of the actual street, which we've already done, but there's nothing that's going to be more affordable than what's already currently present. So let's not sit up here and try to make this thing seem like it's friendly. Let's call it what it is. I have a problem with this proposition. I have a problem with the fact that any of you, if you're considering to vote to change that to townhomes, you know good and full well none of those people will be able to afford it. And it sickens me that we would sit up here and try to play these games after people have spent their lives building this city. There's no place else like 64th Street, and to use the term a more positive, what's not positive about my people? What's wrong with 64th Street as it is? What's going on along the street where the corridor of the church is? What's wrong with having those duplexes? Absolutely nothing. And you all should be ashamed of yourselves if you do vote to go and pass this. Don't think that I will sit up here and let this go just nicely. And you, sir, on that Zoom, you should also be ashamed of yourself. Those people worked hard. That is affordable housing already currently, and our community is positive. Thank you.
Disagree with everything you said, with the exception of the fact that the community is positive. Ms. Williams, you're recognized.
All right, LaShonda Williams, 6477 Southwest 60th Avenue. One of the questions I had is they not too long ago did a streetscape to it's kind of swervy there, so it kind of limited that. So I don't know if that is part of the plan to expand that, if they're planning to increase the density. Huh? I don't know.
Sorry. Sorry.
I don't know if they're planning to expand that when they're talking about increasing the density. The other thing I would say is that when you are talking about the townhome, the question I have is, what is the difference? Because right now, when you have a single-story designation, you can build 2 stories. So what is the difference between that and what the townhome designation is? Because it seems like it's a little bit more depth. And then you mentioned something about an ADU. So I think now you can apply for some kind of permit to do an ADU without that. So what makes that the thing for this current slated project? And have there been traffic studies done? Because right now, that's a small street, even though it goes kind of both ways, and it's a main thoroughfare to the residents of that neighborhood, which I'm one of, and then also through University of Miami. I want to know that we built 2 other projects in that area. What traffic studies are they doing to ensure that if you're increasing the density, how that's going to affect, the residents?
So let's take that in pieces if we can, so we can get all her questions answered. So, Mr. City Attorney or Mr. Alvarez, if you can explain what can be built under the current category. I heard a question about ADUs specifically.
Yeah.
Is that allowed today, and would it be authorized under the new proposed category?
And then what's the difference between single-family home, 2-story, and this townhome residential?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so if, let's start with, remember that this is only the comprehensive plan, this is not the zoning.
Right.
Right, so the zoning doesn't change with this. But
Right.
under this comprehensive plan designation, there is the ability to do ADUs.
Okay.
So that's contemplated in this. It would have to be implemented through the.
Not allowed today, or the current, with the current, I want to clarify the distinction for her.
Correct, not permitted.
So ADUs are not allowed under the current category?
Correct.
They will be moving forward, so an existing owner could build an auxiliary unit
Provided that they get the zoning in place.
in place to do it in the future?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Next question was regarding, I think, the envelope of the building.
Yeah, basically, what's the difference in what it can be, like, to what, so for example, I know I saw something on the previous screen that said something about 10 units per, like, I don't know how many square feet, I don't know how big the lot would be. I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is from a typical South Miami single-family residential versus the townhomes.
Okay, so again, this is not the zoning, this is
Correct,
part of it.
right,
Right,
understood.
so what this contemplates is townhouse residential has a total density of no greater than 36 dwelling units per net acre. However, if you don't count the ADUs, that number is 20 units per acre under this category.
So
The way-
20 units
the way-
per
20
acre.
units per
And
acre.
so for a
What
full
is-
city
and
block,
what
it's
is the
about an
current? What
acre?
is the current density?
The current density under the comprehensive plan, I'm getting there. It actually, yeah, it's a little tricky. It's, well, go ahead, Mark, if
Yeah,
you
the
have it.
current density is 6.91, it's quite low. But again,
Sorry,
right
can
now,
you,
as it,
hey, I didn't hear that clearly. Did you say 6.91?
yeah, it's 6.91.
Okay, is that, I mean, I've never seen a density designation, with 200ths of a fraction. So is it fair to assume, Mr. Alvarez, when they created this category, they basically created to allow what was there today and nothing else? Based on your professional experience?
Yeah, and it's based on the sizes that they would allow.
Okay, so basically, we have an existing designation and density that fits whatever was on the parcel when that was adopted, is what it sounds like to
Correct.
me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want, okay, you had further questions?
Yes, I just wanted to know are there traffic studies, like when you did this flume, and, because I don't remember being invited to any of the charrettes or meetings, but when you were having the discussions, did you discuss, traffic impacts and just the need for services in that area? How does it impact the community as a whole? Because we've had a lot in that short area, and there are other areas in South Miami that are underdeveloped, and we are not in that zone, that Todd district. So I'm trying to figure out, where this is going. Like I said, I like the fact that some of it is being downgraded, but if you're telling me that this new distinction is more units, then really it's a little bit more than what we already have there. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, so we've done data and analysis as we're required to by the state to support each one of these designations. We submitted, so that the process is clear, the text amendments that were adopted that created this district, or actually that amended this district, went to, there was an initial planning study. It went to, I think, 3 or 4 public hearings, 3 or 4, I guess, discussion agendas,
Yeah, but let's, because I know we're going to get by way of a comment, and it's a
Yeah.
fair comment, which is, there was not notice of those public hearings other than general notice. And the reason for that, Ms. Williams, is that those were legislative actions, right? The reason these were noticed is because we've identified a subset of parcels that are being specifically affected. So we have specifically affected parcels. The surrounding notice rules apply.
I still am not receiving those. I know my time is running, but I still am not receiving that in the mail. And, within that zone, that mile radius, we're not getting it. And I think that if you had more feedback, because I understand going through the state legislative process, but there's a legislative process that happens here first with the feedback from the residents to see, is this what we want? It's not just for sale throughout for whomever wants to develop. Of course, any developer wants to. It's a great area, but what is going to fit in with the current topography, what's going to fit in for the residents? I think that is the piece that we want to make sure that's being heard.
So and I think there's another concept here I just want to elaborate on for the benefit of the audience. The comprehensive plan is kind of like the Constitution.
Right.
And, your zoning is your regulations, right, that actually put into practice. And so historically, these things, I think in South Miami, it's fair to say, have been what I would say is lockstep. They've been the same, one the same. So the same standards are found in the comp plan and the zoning code. So they've worked exactly the same.
Right.
With this category, again, to the city attorney's point before, which I'm not sure everyone captured, we do have the opportunity of having a much more liberal, right, designation like this one for the parcels in the comp plan, but limiting it to exactly the development we have today under the zoning.
The only thing, I understand what you're saying, but we've had charrettes before. We've gone through this process, and usually what's in that flume, that future land use map, is what they want to enact. Because then we've had developers sue the city to say, hey, this is what you guys said. You can't now zone for something that this is what it was. So I just want us to be very careful with that future land use.
Yeah, we only get locked into that situation when we've adopted a zoning category that we can't back off of. But we are on, and I think the city attorney can reiterate this, we are on perfectly solid legal ground if our comp plan, because again, it's supposed to be a future land use map, right? So it's talking about a 20-year
when I'm gone,
a 20-year horizon. We're not talking about just today. That's the plan. That's the master plan for the community, right? So,
but just consider that we need single family as well, and we need duplex as well. Everything doesn't have to be upzone. But I'll talk more about the next item.
Yeah, and again, I just wanted for because I know you've asked this question a few times, can we just kind of get to the bottom of the notice issue? And Mr. City Attorney, with respect to the zoning that will follow, since it will affect only a handful of parcels, it will also be noticed, correct?
If it's site-specific rezoning, yes.
So the companion zoning for this parcel, right? So again, first shot at the apple, we hear you. There'll be another opportunity, right? There will be notice associated with the.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the process is after second reading, then you're noticing people by mail. Is that what the process is currently, or?
No. After the comprehensive plan designation process, individual landowners could petition the city to change the zoning, and that will require all sorts of notice.
Right, but that's individual land. I'm talking about the surrounding area. So you no longer have the responsibility for.
No. So two things, just two concepts. One is these owners that there today could ask for a rezoning consistent with this designation.
Correct.
Option one.
Right.
That would trigger notice to the surrounding neighborhood.
Of course, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Secondly, we could come in and say, we want to adopt rules that render it more consistent with the current character of the neighborhood, right? That would be a rezoning process as well. It would also trigger notice. So when we complete this process to implement these regulations, there's got to be a category adopted, right?
Yes. No, we already have a category. So let me clarify.
So yes, this is what I want to clarify.
Yeah, sure. So we have the text of this designation says that the following zoning districts are consistent. RT18, which is a townhouse district, RT9, which is a two-family district, RT6, which is just a slightly lesser duplex district, low-density multifamily residential, which is RM18, and medium-density multifamily residential, RM24. All of these, any one of these districts would be consistent with this designation.
But the question is, what will be the designation or do we have, is the site designated under under our zoning atlas today?
Under our zoning atlas, presently, it is RS3.
Okay,
So it's a single-family designation.
Okay.
Or zoning district.
okay, so are we going to, that category is not consistent with this comp plan designation?
It would not be
Okay.
consistent with this.
So we would have to, we would at least have to rezone it to a category that is consistent?
Yes, however, that we do have a provision which says any existing use and occupancy
Yes,
is
grandfathered.
deemed consistent.
Yeah, because it's grandfathered.
No,
But even, we have like an overt, like an express grandfather clause.
But that doesn't mean we don't have to adopt a category, a designation that's consistent.
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so what's there can remain, no doubt.
Right.
Okay, but we will have to come back through a subsequent process
Yes.
and rezone, at the very least, we will have to rezone it to render it consistent with this comp plan designation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
But
so,
one more thing, the only thing I have an issue with, I'm sure that there are some developers that own those properties as rentals. I remember them changing hands. I mean, we can look that information up. I'm concerned that that is the goal, and we will have the maximum density built, which is the issue that we're having throughout. And I'm just gonna leave it there, and I'll just talk to the next item.
thank you, Ms. Williams. Okay. Yes, sir, you're recognized, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you. What I understand is, see if it's correct, it's zoned for 6 units per acre, and it's going up to 18 per acre if you okay this.
It's not, it's, well,
It's plus a change in zoning.
It's
It would
what?
require a change in zoning on top of this.
So you're tentatively agreeing to 18
W-
units per acre? or
We are adopting a
you're
land
making
use
a
cap.
step toward it?
We're preparing for anything between 0 and 18.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
yes. Further public comment?
All right.
Mr. Ward, you're recognized.
Yeah, Sweeney.
You know, when I listened to this, both pros and con, this lady right here had the nail on the head. The people of the neighborhood are going to be displaced over a period of time. I don't care how much you want to say it won't happen, it will happen. I saw there, I think I saw on one of the screens, 10 townhouses. Where are the people going to be? Those townhouses are going to have to find property to build on. And some of the property, there's a lot of rental property in these areas. And I remember one apartment building on 62nd Avenue at one time was redone inside. Everybody in the apartment was given a written statement. Your apartment will be available when we finish. Sounds good, doesn't it? Except they were paying $300 a month, and when they came back under the new one, it was going to be $600. So they got their apartment back. You can be they didn't. And this young lady hit it on the head. I don't care what has been said here today by me or her or the other lady or Lee. The vote's 4-0. Thank you.
Yes, further public comment. Is there anyone in the audience like to speak on item 2? Anyone online, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay. Seeing no one online and no one else in the audience, we'll close public hearing. Commissioner Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Alvarez, can you answer me this question? Maybe I'm wrong. I think I'm right. Throughout the entire city, didn't we get rid of the designation of duplex and convert it to townhome through the entire city?
We have not done that at this time. We did move in the text changes for the zoning to support a townhouse.
So the idea is that we were going to change all the duplex, currently like the ones on Sunset and 63rd, and all those designations were going to move to townhomes or be changed to townhomes.
Correct. And the reason we did that was to establish 2 things. We would have so for example, if you had, say, one of these properties which are 63 feet wide, you could take the duplex there, redevelop it as a townhouse, actually two townhouses, each 25 feet wide, have the same two new market rate units on the top, and still have an affordable unit as an ADU on the bottom. And so that was the configuration that we realized was a much more modern configuration that gave us a little more affordable housing and allowed a very soft mixed use by allowing an alternative of a live-work occupation on the bottom. So while we haven't done it yet, and this is probably the first time we're actually moving this designation, this is the first time we're actually doing it. You know, the others were already existing. This is the first time we're doing it, and that is the intent, to create an envelope that we can actually get a little more without losing the neighborhood effect. The whole idea of the townhouse was to make sure that all of our doors face the street so that we still have a neighborhood that people still come out on the street. The idea was not to have necessarily a multifamily development where people are no longer facing their doors on the street and taking care of the street.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Yes, Commissioner Corey.
As a possible result of this, would it be feasible that just some of these properties added an ADU to them and had additional housing on the property? Or are they not big enough for that?
That is, I haven't analyzed each one of these for that question, but that is a possibility. An ADU is permitted.
Right.
And an ADU would have to serve the low income category or lower.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Further comments, questions? Mr. City Attorney, I have a question. Can you reiterate the zoning categories again that are consistent with this designation?
Yep. RT 18, which is the townhouse district,
Okay, which allows a density of what?
18 units per acre.
Okay,
RT 9,
okay,
RT 6, RM 18, which is also 18 units per acre. RM 24, subject to the caveat that it cannot exceed 20 units per acre. And RO, subject to a 20 units per acre.
and what is RO?
Residential office.
Okay, so that allows for an office use
Yeah,
on the corridor.
yes. Yeah, but it would only be allowed in connection with a live-work unit.
Okay, Mr. Alvarez, if we were to, just to kind of get to, I want to address some of the angst about this particular action, which from my perspective was being done just to basically consolidate categories and have a more manageable, gentlemen, I apologize, we're trying to have a conversation. I'm hearing your conversation as well in the background. Again, we're trying to consolidate categories so we have a much more workable code for the purposes of our staff, right? As opposed to a bunch of one-off categories that have been created over the last couple of decades. Mr. Alvarez, what zoning designation would you recommend be adopted for these parcels to keep it consistent with the current development category? Just to understand what that would look like.
We intend to recommend RT 18, a townhouse designation.
Okay, but that was not my question. My question was, what would you recommend to keep it consistent with the current character of the existing character of the improved condition? So what designation would allow you to rebuild exactly what's there today? Let me simplify the question.
RT6.
As we consolidate, it would still be the RT 18. Well,
Let me rephrase the question again. What is the least intense designation that we could impose on these parcels to allow for the units that are there today to be rebuilt without them being non-conforming?
The least intense would be
Yes,
the
sir.
RT6.
RT6, okay. So, colleagues, I think that's what I just wanted to have that articulated so we understand as we look at making a decision about the designation on a going forward basis. If we want to address some of the issues that we're hearing today about possible displacement, the best thing we can do is when we bring this item back for rezoning is select an RT6 designation, I'm happy to sponsor that, if that's the disposition of the board. And come what may in the future, people can make a request to change the category to something else, but at least we provide a direct translation from what is there today to what will be there at least for the near term. So is there a motion on item 2, if there's no further discussion?
I'll move the motion, Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
So a motion by Commissioner Kaye and a second by Vice Mayor Corey. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll on item 2, please.
Yes, Vice Mayor Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Kaye,
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Item passed first reading.
If you could read item 3, please.
Item 3, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of South Miami, Florida, amending the future land use map of the future land use element of the City of South Miami Comprehensive Plan pursuant to small-scale amendment procedures set forth in section 163.3187 for the statutes to change the future land use designation of certain parcels on the south side of Southwest 64th Terrace between Southwest 60th Avenue on the east and Southwest 61st Court on the west from the current designation of mixed-use residential moderate density MRMD to townhouse residential TR.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Alvarez, you're recognized for your presentation.
Thank you again. Mark Alvarez with Coordinating Group Planning Consultant for the city. This is extremely similar to the 64th Street that we just discussed. These parcels, commonly we call them the mango parcels, are currently designated MRMD, which is a mixed residential moderate density category. So they are not they are designated for a sort of a duplex type unit. We intend to change that designation to townhouse residential for the same reason that we intend to eliminate the category of MRMD and use townhouse residential as our general category for all the townhouse type dwelling units or designations that we can have different zoning categories for. It is sponsored by the city administration. It is also a small scale amendment process. And it is also generally consistent with what we discussed in the workshop in the summer and as we move forward with the future land use element text that we would be looking at as we go north from the downtown designation to come into this area with a townhouse designation to transition. Next slide, please. So the area that we're talking about, it is currently, it is all vacant. It is owned by the city. It comprises an acre, almost even. It's comprised of 3 parcels. There's, I think there's been some concern about the strip on the edge. The strip on the edge, going back to when it was put together, was actually from another platting. And it does have a restriction for no construction, and I think the restriction still is with it. However, we are taking this all together, and we don't, the fact that there's a restriction on that small strip on the end wouldn't affect what could be done as far as any development there. We could look at the whole parcel. Next slide, please. So it's an unusually shaped parcel, and to the east is a single family residence, and that single family residence is in the historic preservation overlay. It is the former home of Marshall Williamson, who actually had donated much of this land and even the JRE Lee School to the city and to the county. So this parcel goes around that home to a certain extent. And then on the west side of it is the JRE Lee School and 61st Court. The designation of that is educational at the moment. And north of that is 64th Terrace. We have some single family homes across from it to the north. And to the south of it, it abuts on the side lot lines 2 single family homes. So it is mostly surrounded by single family homes, and it is across from the school, the rear side of the JRE Lee School, and it somewhat works around the former home of Marshall Williamson. Next slide, please. And I failed to say too, it is catty corner across from the Madison Square to the northeast. So again, this is very similar to the last one. We are changing just the future land use map. We are eliminating the MRMD category. We want to replace it with townhouse residential. Next slide, please. And the impacts are very much the same. I know it was a bit of a complicated discussion, but the townhouse residential future land use category allows 36 units an acre. The zoning would only allow 18 units an acre. And the reason for that was to account for the ADUs on the comprehensive plan. Right now, there's the MRMD allows this, 6.91 units an acre. Six residences could be built there, but they would be basically duplex residences. So we are increasing the density, but again, this is something that will be controlled as much of the TR category. When we get to rezoning, the TR is very much controlled by the dimensions and the site, the dimensions of the lot. In this case, it's a little bit more open, and we would look at the zone at the time we rezone, and when somebody comes in to redevelop it, or I guess it's the cities when somebody has an idea. Next slide, please. And finally, the same categories for consistency. We want to make sure this is consistent with the state requirements in Chapter 163. We've gone through all 8 of them and find it to be consistent. If we want to have a discussion, I'm open to questions.
Colleagues, questions of Mr. Alvarez? None? Mr. Alvarez, I know on page 4 of your staff report, you made mention in the second or the first full paragraph, our discussion on February 4th about a park designation. I thought we had moved to designate, I think roughly not less than 8,000 square feet of the northeast portion of this
That's
lot
correct.
for a park in honor of Dr. Anna Price. Why not bring this item with a POS designation, or was this item prepared in advance of that discussion?
This item was prepared in advance of that discussion.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to clarify. Okay, so, Mr. City Attorney, then a question to you. If our express intent through that resolution on the 4th has already been to designate that portion as a park, would we bring back this item with that POS designation on second reading, or should we continue this item, re-advertise it with that modification?
We can do the latter, or we could proceed with this item. We could also pull back the boundary for this change, if you want to do that, and then just come
Come back with a separate item
bring
for
a
that
separate item for
portion.
the park. We could do that.
I guess my only reservation about this item, right? That was my question. Let me say that for discussion. And no other questions of the city attorney or staff? Okay. Seeing no questions from my colleagues here on the commission, why don't we open up this item for public hearing? If there's any member of the public who'd like to address this commission on item 3, please come forward at this time. Good evening.
Shante Wells, 6102 Southwest 68th Street.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. How did the city come to acquire this specific lot that we, as the locals, refer to the Marshall Williamson's lot? How did you guys come to own it?
Mr. City Attorney, do you have that answer, or maybe we can rely on the good office of Mr. McCants if he
Perhaps
has
the
a
office of
history?
Mr. McCants would be easier. I know it came through the CRA,
Yeah,
but
that
Mr. McCants
was
may have
my guess, Ms. Wells. It was acquired by the CRA, but I don't know that definitively. Mr. McCants, could you just for the record clarify for us?
Everybody, it was acquired by the CRA. The purpose was to possibly include it in our Madison Square initiative. It was, at one time, we tried to put all the portions together for that aspect, and that was during the days of the CRA. Okay?
Thank you.
So, we got rid of the CRA, and do you believe, as a governmental body, that what you're proposing to do was the intention of Mr. Marshall Williamson when he donated this? Was that the purpose when it was initially acquired? What you're seeking to do now? Was that the purpose? I just need someone to tell me. It's yes or no.
I don't think any one of us can speculate as to what was in the mind of Marshall Williamson when he donated the property. I will say, what we have had conversations about, I'll tell you what I certainly have said on the record. One is I think that I wanted to designate a portion of this land as a park to preserve some of the canopy that's there because of that legacy. Also, I've had conversations with Rick Cantz about getting together the family because I think it's important for us as a city to preserve his homestead and make the combination of those two lots possibly a cultural heritage site for the city to recognize and memorialize that history. There's a competing interest, which is the CRA. My understanding of the CRA plan historically was for the majority of this lot to be developed for townhomes, for affordable townhomes, for the benefit of the community. We've had some conversations about reserving the balance for that purpose. Mr. McCants mentioned their Madison Square initiative. My review of the historical records was that at one point, possibly about 10 or 12 years ago, this lot was put out for RFP. Mr. Alvarez, if you can mute your microphone, was put out for RFP in conjunction with the parcels that were developed and awarded, and negotiation rights were awarded to that developer to develop the site as part of that project. Those negotiations apparently never went forward. So the parcel, when the CRA ceased to exist, was reverted back to the city as the local governing unit, and that's how we ended up in possession. But what we do with it is can be within the range of any of those options. I believe what staff is proposing is a category that gives us a certain amount of flexibility to accomplish any or all of those goals, ma'am.
So my issue is this. That lot hasn't been developed on for a purpose. It has been that way for a reason. Mr. Marshall Williamson really sacrificed and built that entire community. And what I'm seeing happening now is there used to be apartments on the other side. There's been a portion of it that was dedicated to housing as that was important for him. But what I'm seeing is a consistent pattern. There are other empty lots that were brought up even as you guys were campaigning. There are other areas, but every single area that was formerly considered the CRA area, now we're going through this whole land use. This is nothing but fancy talk for a gentrification. There's no need to get rid of the actual trees that are there. So is this supposed to become now a concrete jungle like in the Northeast? We already got those type of policing like strategies that are happening now in the area. So what is the purpose? What would be the purpose? That is not why Mr. Marshall Williamson has that lot. And I really, really would encourage you all to go ahead and come back and allow more residents to come forward before you make a determination on this, because I can tell you this will not sit well with the rest of the residents had they known this. Now, I do like the idea of the I want to call her Dr. Price.
It's fine.
Former Mayor Price having that designation, a piece of that, but to sit up here and to have a plan for housing for all of this, that's never been a part of the plan, ever.
Ma'am, all I can tell you is what's in the record. I don't want to argue with you, but I frankly want to defend the motives of this commission. I, for one, have no interest in gentrifying anyone. I've commented about the fact that in my 6 years in public office, when I walked the neighborhood 6 times in 2018, I've seen the change in a very short period of time. I've even suggested that we preserve this parcel completely as a park in its entire configuration today. Again, I'm one person. We will have a conversation as a board. We have now different members when we started the conversation a year and a half ago. But I think, again, I just urge you not to impugn the motives of the people that are sitting here, because frankly, we're trying to honor what we have seen in the written record. And the written record, as the vision for this area as memorialized in the CRA plan, was to have development on this parcel. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but that's what was in the plan created for this parcel by that entity that no longer exists. We can choose to do that, or we can choose not to do that. What we're doing today is adopting a category that would give us the flexibility to do it. I would like to see us possibly consider this item after it's deferred and at least ensconce the one corner that we've already said we want to keep a park to memorialize the great legacy of the Reverend Dr. Anna Price, reflected on the map that we adopt. So again, thank you for your comments, but again, I just urge you, let's have some conversation so we all can get to understand what we're trying to accomplish. I hear and understand your frustrations and concerns, but again, one of the things I love about South Miami is its diversity. The last thing I want to see is that legacy, that history completely wiped out. Okay.
I just read body language as I read body language the last time. and many of you guys seem disinterested in what's being said here, not just by myself, but also when Ms. Williams was speaking. So I just want us to be clear as to where this is coming from as well. Thank
Okay.
you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Ward, you're recognized.
This commission, I think, is probably approved more major development projects in the short time you've been there than any commission in the history of this city. You know, you all are elected by the people, not the developers, but you're representing the developers. You're not representing the residents of this city. And that's a shame, because most of you, and all of you, in my opinion, are well-intended people. But you just somehow or other can't connect with the fact that the people are not pleased. You see, the trouble is, one is not enough. Your developers are running this city now. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs?
Once again, you're looking at an increase of 6 units per acre to 18 units per acre. To me, it's a sacrilege on land that was donated in the black community for a certain purpose, for the good of that community, which used to be completely black, and it was for their good. A community needs some space, some place for the kids to go, some place to sit out in the shade, and that's what that provided. To provide a little 8,000-foot square for it is not enough. It should be the whole thing. It should be a park. And if it's not, did the CRA, I heard them say that it was for affordable housing. 100% affordable housing? Can you do that? 6 stories, 18 units per acre of affordable housing?
Thank you. Mr. Proctor, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Jerry Proctor. I'm an attorney with office at 7600 Red Road in South Miami. I represent Abreu Development, which is a current property owner and developer in the city of the Madison Square development. We have engaged in the beginnings of discussions to potentially develop part of this property. I'm coming forward tonight with a little bit of hesitation because normally when I stand here, I represent a property owner. You are the property owner, and you have the control, as you do even when a private property owner stands in front of you. So, you know, we recognize that you are not only the decision maker in terms of the land use, but in this case, you're the property owner. What I would commit to you, and I have a couple of commitments and a suggestion as someone who has interest, not someone who owns the property yet. The commitments are that if my client moves forward in any tangible way on this matter, that any proposal that we make, and we're not in a position to make a complete proposal tonight, will include affordable housing. The second commitment is any proposal that we make will include a suggestion to you as property owner that part of the land be designated and held in park use in honor of Mayor Price. I hope that those commitments are helpful. My suggestion, having heard from members of the community tonight and having heard from you, is that if you pass this matter forward on first reading tonight, that perhaps you consider a delay of the second reading in order for these conversations to continue, not only involving my client, but yourselves, the community, and that perhaps the second reading be delayed until the middle of April or thereabouts. Something to allow the discussion to continue. Again, we're not the property owner, but we come forward with these suggestions and commitments as a way to hopefully help the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Williams?
Good evening again, LaShonda Williams, 6477 Southwest 60th Avenue. I'm going to talk really fast, I don't have much time. Well, first of all, you guys know I live over there, across the street from my house. No disrespect to the developer, but he's trying to get a job for his client, and you guys are part of us. You're not only residents, you're elected officials. We voted for you. We're hoping that you're going to listen to our concerns. So with that being said, I was on the CRA board when they transitioned that, and initially Madison Square at the 4 height that it is 4 stories was not a thing, which is why they were trying to preserve the Madison Square lot, because when the housing was lost, it was 80 units of housing that was lost and people were displaced. So Madison Square was supposed to be the replacement of that. They built two different parcels that the Mr. Abreu's group that I think is connected with our county commissioner, Regalado. But with that being said, we've done that part already. What we don't have in that space, and I did contact the county, Mayor Cava is very much a part of making sure that we have a heat officer. There is a heat index for every cubic foot of concrete that we're adding. There is a temperature increase, that's a proven fact, and we need open green spaces. I don't mean green spaces in little parcels. We need a space. It's for wind mitigation, it's for hurricanes, it's for flood mitigation. So there are other factors, not just having housing. If you are going to consider housing, there is a place that abuts on the opposite end, directly in front of the park. Why would it be in front of the residents? We already we had to fight having 4 stories abutting single-family homes. We don't have a 75-foot buffer. I don't know if that's a new thing, but we barely have the Sotos. They're so tired of coming. I almost beg Angie to come with me tonight. She doesn't, she's over it. She says she's tired. You know, we have so much trash that has come about from the mixed-use facility, traffic, just all kinds of things, big trucks down the street early in the morning, and we are trying to preserve. Not only that, that fruit from those trees, you can't grow that. I've been growing a mango tree in my yard from those pits for 12 years. It still hasn't produced any fruit. It's starting, it looks like we're gonna have a good year this year, but nonetheless, that's something that he was proud of. Not only did he eat that fruit and his wife planted those trees, but it was for the community. And let me tell you, we still utilize that. People still come by there, they grab this. The only fruit I found better is in the Redlands. And our Dr. Bauer, that used to work with me at UM, God rest his soul, he used to bring them to work and they were delicious. That's the only fruit that can rival that. I offer you guys during the season to go by and try one. But it's not just about that, it's about the community and being able to have a space that's open. Every space doesn't have to be filled. And I've done this now for how many years? And when I was on the board, and I've gotten off a lot of boards because I don't have the time, but it's very important to me for us to preserve that, not just for Dr. Price, but also for Marshall Williamson. His family still lives there in that house. They're right next door. So whatever we put there, they're gonna be affected by it, and me as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Further comments? Mr. McCants? Thank you for clarifying.
James McCants, 6210 Southwest 63rd Terrace. Is there a way to postpone the second reading to get a better perspective to the actual community about these items tonight? We're going to have a community meeting on the 19th at the community center at 6 o'clock. And if it's possible, could someone come so that we can reach a broader majority of the immediate area, just to hear the concerns and just to give their input so they'll know what's coming? Is that possible?
It is. Actually, I was going to have some comments in that regard as well at the end of the discussion, so
Okay, good
appreciate it.
enough. Second thing is going to be about the traffic there with the traffic study. Before there's a major incident, and I have talked to people about 64th Street in front of the dollar store, 64th and 60th Avenue, and 64th and 59th Place. There's a potential hazard there. We don't want anything to happen to the kids or anybody that's disabled coming across there. I was there just today to see the traffic there, and could we initiate something with the county to sort of do something to try to at least stop or slow down the traffic so people can come by, especially during the rush hours when kids are coming to and from school. Okay? Okay, good enough.
Thank you, Mr. McCants. Further comments? Okay, seeing no one in the audience, Madam Clerk, is there anyone online?
No.
So we will close the public hearing at this time. Colleagues, Commissioner Kaya, you're recognized.
Mr. McCants, speaking about the crosswalk, you don't need to stand up. Just talking about the crosswalk, we had designated in our CIP budget to make sure that we have illuminated crosswalk there. It's something that we had in our budget. I don't know where we are this year with it. I know we have designated more spots throughout the city to make sure that we have crosswalks in our kids more protected there, Miller, 62nd Avenue across the city. So, Commission.
Can I piggyback on just on that item really quickly for a question to City Attorney? Is that a location where we can actually, if we were short of CIP dollars, could we use proceeds from the school cameras to improve pedestrian connections across 64th Street?
I don't know the answer to that. I need to look at the statute.
Okay, if you could, I'm just curious so that we know that we have that opportunity. There is a school on the south side of 64th, so potentially it's a very important connection if people are traversing that very busy roadway. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
So when we first started talking about this park for Dr. Price, I was speaking about it for nearly over a year. The idea was always to create a
Longer, by the way.
Say again? Longer. It was always to create a park, to leave it as is. There's been back and forth on the dais, whether there's already a lot of park space across the street. So my understanding is that we always wanted to do a park. I don't know if the CRA's intention was to create affordable housing out there. So the intention was either leave the park or affordable housing. Now, with the creation of said park that we have, a maximum of 8,000 square feet, I remember it was Minimax, whatever it was. The ability to do affordable housing, the density in that space doesn't really matter. There's only so much you can create in that little sliver of land. So to create affordable housing there, is it really worth it? Is it even doable, to be honest with you? In construction, it's not that easy to do affordable housing in that particular spot. You got to be really creative with it. So just letting the commission know that it's difficult, and we really need to study that. So a deferment here might be the best thing to do here. But those are the two issues I've always contemplated. What does the community want? So I think what, Mayor, you were going to go at, do we need to have a public forum and really discuss what we should do with this particular lot?
Yeah, I was going to go a step further and say we should just identify an area, a radius around this parcel, and send people a very short questionnaire and ask them between a handful of options what their preference is, and maybe they can rank them. We can come up with an instrument just to ask people their opinion. We do it often. We can leaflet door to door with our public works staff and get some direct feedback on what their preference is as to the future use of the parcel, whether it's preservation as a park in its entirety, whether it's development altogether, or whether it's the combination that we had been discussing at the last meeting when we talked about the park naming. So I'd be supportive of that idea.
Something that worked really well, and I think this is only when we are actually designing a park, but when we did it for Paseo, we had like a little sandwich board up and with a QR code, and people just filled out a survey for what they liked the most, and we did get a lot of feedback from that. I think that would be particularly helpful. And I have had the benefit of being on this dais with a lot of different commission members, and I would say that of that, this commission has had really the best ideas for how to utilize this space in terms of preserving history, in terms of creating community. There have been a lot of ideas that have come forward for this lot that were a lot less attractive than what we're considering, but I do think we should put it out to the community, see what everybody wants. I've always been a fan of a passive park. I know that initiative was taken on by the mayor, and it was very, very difficult when we first started, and took us a year, and we're here. So I'm a fan of that, but I would love to get more feedback on it too.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Chantel and LaShonda, I agree with you, LaShonda. We work for you. You don't work for us. I said that many times to everybody that I spoke to in the city. Being the most recent one to walk your neighborhood and walk the city in general multiple times, I want you to understand, in speaking to a lot of the residents in the community, or especially the Marshall Williamson community, one of the things that they stated was that they needed housing. So for my understanding, in speaking to a lot of the residents that were saying, we need to not only, and Mr. McCants can account for this, bring back people to South Miami, people who have left the neighborhood. We need housing for them to come back. So for me, thinking if we can do affordable housing here in this lot, or in this designation of the lot, it would help the community. Now, like I said, we work for you. If the community doesn't want it, I'm okay with voting against it and not doing anything with that land. I was just trying to follow what the voices of the community. But again, if the community doesn't want it, then so be it, when it comes to my perspective.
Yes, ma'am, if you want to come forward, we'll recognize you. If you can keep it to a minute, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I agree with you. I think that, hi, it's LaShonda again. Just to be really brief, I agree with you in terms of the housing, but what hasn't been a thing, there's a term affordable, and I worked in different avenues, and I can tell you that we're talking about, for the other project, 120% of the area median income. This area median income is high, and so a lot of people that have left, and I know the people, I always tell them, can you stay? Can we figure out something? And a lot of times they just can't, because their incomes haven't been increased enough to afford what this AMI is. So when you're talking about affordable, that's really not affordable for the people that left to come back. What we would have to look into would be low income, and that's become a dirty word. That's become a dirty word because people don't want to have to support those projects, and like you said, it's mixed use. But I will say that the Brayu project that they did, it has no green space. So when it rains, whatever runoff we used to have, there used to be 2 shotgun houses there with grass. There's no more of that. There's no green space. So we have to balance. We can't just build and say, oh, when we get a flood, oh wow, how did that happen? Yeah, we're going to have that because we have a lot more permeable land. So like I said, I'm all for that. If we want to talk about projects, but it doesn't necessarily have to be there. There's a huge city. It doesn't have to be in that area. When people came back, we weren't structured just to that little block. That was a certain section. We had people on the dark side. We had people all over South Miami. So I'm not saying that they're going to be in like very high-end upscale neighborhoods with these projects, because we know that that's not what we do, being honest. But if you are going to talk about that, then we have to be realistic. I'm saying in terms of who can come back, because we did that with Madison Square. We fought like hell to get some people back in there, but for the most part, it's a mix, and it's fine. The next project was the same. So we never really fully get that back the way that we intended, especially once you guys are gone, whoever's next, pick it up, because honestly, that was designated for something else. Something in here said something about 2022. The planning board had already designated that as an open, passive park, and then it just disappeared. So if you're talking about 2012 study, that was from 2022 and it didn't happen. So as each board changes, then the focus changes, what they promise change. So I would like to see it once and for all be something that we can assure that will be there for the community. And I do feel affinity about the mangoes. Somebody came the other day to cut off one of the things, hat racking the tree. I was having a fit. I'm like, what are you doing? I have a picture. I didn't send it to you guys, but I took it. I'm like, what? You can't do that. This is the city of South Miami. We have trees. This is Trees City USA. We have ordinances. You can't just go doing that. Okay, don't think because we're black I'm not looking. I'm looking. I see you. This is my house. It's my investment, I work. So anyway, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that.
No, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
All right.
Okay. We're gonna close public hearing if we hadn't already done that. But colleagues, I'd like to move to defer the item to the first meeting in June.
Second.
And with the idea that in the interim, we direct the manager to put together some sort of a survey instrument that's delivered door to door. Mr. Manager, I leave it to you and staff to determine what you think is an appropriate radius. If it's 500 or 700 feet, I'm not sure exactly what the what the right rate is, I believe it's you guys to determine. And if you could kind of just circulate the instrument for comment individually by each one of the members of the board. As soon as you have it ready, let's get it out. If we can bring the item back with that feedback sooner, I'm happy to consider it. That would be my motion, to defer it in total to at least the first meeting in June, with the proviso we could bring it back, re-advertise and bring it back sooner if we have community feedback. I don't know that we need a community meeting per se. I think sometimes not everyone in the community shows up to those meetings because they've got other life commitments. I think a direct survey, which is what I'm proposing, would probably give us a more accurate representation of what people would want. So if there's that'd be my motion. If there's a second.
Before the motion, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just had a question. I know we've been working on a lot of the designations, timelines, and making sure that we hit. This doesn't affect that, right?
I don't believe it does. Mr. City Attorney, what are the impacts of deferring this item?
This item would be slowed down, obviously.
But
That's-
we can separate it, right?
We can, yes, we can
Yes.
pull it out without any penalty.
Okay, so I've moved the deferral for, is it 60 days or 90 days?
Yeah, I think you're saying it to the first meeting in June, which is this,
Let's just do this. Let's defer it to the first meeting in May. That's 60
In May.
days. That should be enough time for us to get feedback. If not, we can defer it again if we need more time.
okay,
Okay.
first meeting in May.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion on the deferral?
So on the deferral, what we would do is send out a paper and it'd be a survey rather than the residents coming in and doing.
Yeah, and again, we can do both if that's the preference of the body. I think my experience, I'm a big believer in scientific data. I spend money polling things, and I believe in the science still. I think if we had a direct survey door to door, then a follow-up wants to collect it, we probably could get better feedback about what the true wishes are, as opposed to just having a community meeting where maybe for any number of legitimate reasons, only a handful of people can show up. And again, given that is, one of the few remaining green spaces here that's not accounted for in this neighborhood, happy to be, more deliberate about what we decide to do here. Again, my intention from the beginning was to keep this as a green space, as Vice Mayor Corey had mentioned. There was some pushback to that idea because they felt we should monetize the site originally in some portion. And so, again, trying to get something done, particularly in my case, trying to get a portion of the site named in honor of Dr. Price, I was trying to, strike a compromise there with the board at that moment in time. I also want to say I was trying to be respectful of the history of the site, which, again, the documents I've read very clearly, this body, the CRA, had moved to bifurcate the site and develop it for affordable housing. So, again, my intention was to honor that legacy, but again, not only does this board change, the preferences of the community can change as well. So again, I see no harm done in asking people what they want to see at this particular point in time. Certainly, the neighborhood has changed in the decade that probably this last idea to develop it was considered.
Through the mayor, I will go with however you all decide. I just think I'm afraid to hear it got lost in the mail. I never received it in the mail. I think the community has shown, like we saw in the last commission meeting, when it's important to the community, they're gonna show up. So I think let's let them show up. Show how the importance of it, and I think it's more impactful.
Would you like to amend the motion then to do? You want to do a combination?
We can do a
survey
combo.
and
I think
public
that gives
meeting?
the best of both worlds. Do a combo.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to accept the amendment. Is there a date we would like to try to target, or a week, since I know some of us have travel schedules? First week of April makes sense? Okay, so, Mr. Manager, if you can identify a date the first week of April for a public meeting, and in the interim, I think if we could prepare the survey, circulate it for comment, and get that out with an informational notice about a public meeting, people can deliver their surveys, responses at that meeting, or come in person and speak their mind as well. So, okay, we have a motion as amended. Was there a second?
Mayor, just to clarify,
Yes.
it would be a meeting, it would come back to commission for first reading on May 6th. That's the first.
On May 6th, that would be the
commission
announcement.
meeting
We
in
would
May.
not need to re-advertise then?
We would not, we may want to anyway.
Assuming the item is not modified, assuming the feedback is, community says, develop it as planned, we could bring it back without, again, I'm just trying to save costs as well.
Understood.
So, Okay, so we'll have a date certain of May 6th. We'll defer the item to, with directions to staff to prepare a survey the community, and schedule a public meeting date the first week of April. I've moved that. Was there a second by Commissioner Kaye?
Court.
Vice Mayor Corey? Okay, so we have a motion to accept do you accept the modification, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second is modified. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Commissioner Kaye?
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Corey?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes,
Item passes to defer.
thank you. Seeing no further business before this board, we will consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you.